Before King Kong scaled its spire, this was the bloodiest battleground of America's wealthiest family. A civil war fought not with guns, but with architecture to eclipse each other's light. Look closely at this faded daguerreotype, a spectral whisper from a bygone era. Two colossal mansions stand shoulder to shoulder, their ornate facades mirroring a rivalry far deeper than mere stone and mortar. Now watch as the past burns away, giving way to the soaring metallic modernity of the Empire State Building. Beneath this monolithic titan, the echoes of a familial feud still resonate, a saga of ego, ambition, and the relentless pursuit of social supremacy. The year is 1890. New York City, then as now, pulsed with an insatiable hunger for progress and power. But this was an era unlike any before or since, the Gilded Age. A period of breathtaking economic expansion, fueled by the relentless engines of industrialization, westward expansion, and unfettered capitalism. Fortunes were not just made, they were forged in the crucible of steel mills, railroad empires, and burgeoning financial markets. The titans of industry, the Carnegies, the Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers, amassed wealth on a scale previously unimaginable, transforming the very fabric of American society. And at the apex of this new aristocracy stood the Astor family. Their empire built not on smoke and steam, but on the most enduring commodity of all, Manhattan real estate. The Astor legacy began with John Jacob Astor I, a German immigrant who arrived in America with little more than a flute and a dream. Through shrewd fur trading and even shrewder investments in land, he laid the foundation for one of the greatest fortunes in American history. By the late 19th century, his descendants owned vast swaths of New York City, their names synonymous with immense, unassailable wealth. But wealth, even immense wealth, did not automatically guarantee social standing, especially in the stratified, meticulously organized society of Gilded Age New York. That realm was governed by unspoken rules, ancient lineage, and the formidable will of a select few. At the epicenter of this social galaxy, orbited by every aspirant and pretender, sat Caroline Webster Schermerhorn Astor. To the world, she was simply Mrs. Astor, a title she wore not as a mere marital designation, but as a crown. She was the undisputed monarch of New York society, the arbiter of taste, the gatekeeper of the coveted 400, a carefully curated list of individuals deemed worthy of inclusion in her exclusive ballroom, said to be the maximum capacity of her Fifth Avenue mansion. Her word was law, her judgment final. Her grand residence at the corner of 34th Street and Fifth Avenue was not merely a home, it was a fortress, a symbol of her unyielding authority, a beacon of tradition and order in a rapidly changing world. Its elegant brownstone facade, stately windows, and verdant garden spoke of an old-world charm, a quiet confidence rooted in generations of established privilege. But even the most unshakable thrones can feel the tremor of challenge. The challenger emerged from within her own family, William Waldorf Astor, her nephew. William was a man of immense wealth, perhaps even greater than her formidable aunt, but his temperament and ambitions were markedly different. He had spent years abroad, cultivating a more European sensibility, even attempting a career in politics and diplomacy that, in his eyes, had not yielded the recognition he deserved. He perceived himself as the rightful head of the Astor family. The senior male line, yet found himself overshadowed by his aunt's social dominance. He yearned for a recognition that was his by birthright, not by social decree. This simmering resentment festered, fueled by a deep-seated desire to assert his own identity and power. The very geography of their lives intensified this quiet war. William's magnificent mansion stood immediately adjacent to Caroline's, a grand edifice of red brick and stone designed by the acclaimed architect Richard Morris Hunt. Two titans of wealth, two branches of the same family tree, living literally side by side on the most prestigious thoroughfare in America. Yet, despite their proximity, an invisible chasm separated them. Caroline steadfastly refused to acknowledge William as the rightful Mr. Astor of the family, let alone yield her own coveted title. The social slights, the whispered snubs, the unacknowledged claims of seniority, these were the invisible daggers exchanged in the rarefied air of Fifth Avenue. The political and economic climate of the 1990s only amplified these personal stakes. With fortunes being made at dizzying speed, a new moneyed class was constantly seeking entry into the established echelons of society. Caroline Astor, with her rigid rules and exclusionary 400, represented the old guard's desperate attempt to hold back the tide of social mobility. William Waldorf Astor, though himself immensely wealthy and aristocratic, perhaps saw an opportunity to disrupt this established order, to carve out his own space in a world that was increasingly valuing modern ambition over inherited tradition. It was during these fraught years, with the turn of the century looming and the air thick with both opportunity and discontent, that William Waldorf Astor's frustration reached its breaking point. He had returned to New York from his European sojourn, determined to reclaim what he felt was his rightful place at the pinnacle of American society. But his aunt's unyielding grip on the social reins, her refusal to grant him the deference he craved, became an unbearable affront. His resentment crystallized into a singular, audacious plan, a declaration of war, not with words or social maneuvers, but with solid stone and soaring height. He would not just challenge his aunt's authority, he would literally overshadow it. The stage was set for a conflict that would redefine the very landscape of New York City and leave an indelible mark on the legend of America's wealthiest family. The seed of a revolutionary idea had been planted, an architectural act of defiance that would forever change the corner of 34th Street and Fifth Avenue. The whispers began subtly, barely audible above the clatter of horse-drawn carriages and the distant rumble of the elevated trains, but in the tightly knit, gossamer web of Gilded Age society, even a whisper could carry the weight of an earthquake. William Waldorf Astor, stung by what he perceived as his aunt's relentless condescension and refusal to acknowledge his rightful place at the family's helm, harbored a resentment that seethed beneath his polished exterior. He owned the grand mansion next door to Caroline's, a magnificent brownstone designed by Richard Morris Hunt, a testament to his own considerable fortune. But it was not enough. The shadow of Mrs. Astor loomed perpetually, a constant reminder of his social subjugation. Then came the astonishing news, not delivered through polite channels, but through the brazen pages of the city's newspapers. William Waldorf Astor had announced his intention to demolish his ancestral home, the very symbol of his family's legacy on Fifth Avenue. This news ripped through New York society like a cannon shot. To tear down such a monument in such a prime location was unthinkable, a sacrilege against tradition. But what he planned to build in its place was even more audacious, a direct assault on the very foundation of his aunt's social empire, a luxury hotel. This was no mere commercial venture. It was an act of architectural warfare. In an era where private residences were the ultimate markers of status, building a public establishment, even one of opulence, on Fifth Avenue was scandalous. It was a thumbed nose at convention, a defiant roar in a world accustomed to polite murmurs. William, ever the strategist, envisioned something grander, taller, more imposing than anything his aunt could possibly endure. His instruction to the architects was clear: make it overshadow Mrs. Astor's house. The motive was naked, the intent unambiguous: to literally cast a shadow, both physical and metaphorical, over his aunt's carefully cultivated domain. The designs for the Waldorf Hotel were revolutionary for their time. 13 stories high, a veritable skyscraper in an age of genteel townhouses, it would be an edifice of unparalleled luxury and scale. Its sheer bulk would loom over Caroline's mansion, blocking the precious sunlight from her famous garden and peering directly into her private windows. This was not just a building, it was an instrument of psychological torment, meticulously designed to intrude upon and diminish his aunt's daily life. The construction began with a fervor that matched William's ambition. The elegant brownstone, once a symbol of Astor power, was reduced to rubble, a dramatic visual metaphor for William's rejection of the old order. The serene corner of 34th Street and 5th Avenue was transformed into a cacophony of hammers, drills, and the shouts of laborers, a constant affront to Caroline's aristocratic sensibilities. For Caroline Astor, this was an unimaginable humiliation. Her nephew's actions were a direct challenge to her unassailable position, a public declaration that her authority was not absolute. The thought of a commercial enterprise, a hotel, standing shoulder to shoulder with her sacred family home was an unbearable affront. It signaled a dangerous shift in the social landscape, the erosion of the old guard's power in the face of burgeoning new money and its willingness to flaunt its wealth in unprecedented ways. The Gilded Age, while built on immense fortunes, still clung to a fragile veneer of decorum and inherited status. William Waldorf Astor was tearing that veneer apart, brick by brick. The social ramifications were immediate and profound. Society matrons whispered behind their fans, debating the audacity of William's move. Some condemned it as crude and disrespectful. Others, particularly those from newer moneyed families, secretly admired its boldness, seeing it as a potential crack in Caroline's ironclad social hierarchy. The press, ever eager for scandal among the elite, reveled in the drama, turning the private family feud into a public spectacle. Caroline, ever composed, maintained a dignified silence in public, but within the hallowed walls of her mansion, her outrage burned fiercely. She understood that this was more than just a family squabble. It was a battle for the very soul of New York society, a struggle between tradition and modernity, between inherited status and audacious ambition. In 1893, the Waldorf Hotel opened its doors, a glittering spectacle of opulence and grandeur. Its interiors, designed by the famed architect Henry J. Hardenberg, were a lavish display of marble, velvet, and gilded accents. It boasted electricity, private bathrooms, and an army of staff, unprecedented luxuries that redefined the very concept of hospitality. From its dazzling Peacock Alley to its elegant ballrooms, the Waldorf became an instant sensation, drawing in a new generation of wealthy industrialists, powerful politicians, and international travelers who preferred its modern amenities and vibrant atmosphere to the staid formality of private homes. It was a democratic palace where wealth, regardless of its origin, could buy entry into an exclusive world. William Waldorf Astor had succeeded. The Waldorf Hotel was a resounding commercial triumph and, more importantly, a potent symbol of his independence and power. The hotel's immense shadow now literally fell across his aunt's garden and windows, a daily, tangible reminder of his victory. Guests at the Waldorf, many of whom were excluded from Caroline's 400, now had a front-row seat to the drama,
often gazing down from the hotel's higher floors at Mrs. Astor's comparatively modest residence. The once sacred private sphere of the Astor matriarch was now encroached upon, observed, and eclipsed by the very enterprise her nephew had designed to spite her. The impact on Caroline was devastating. Her peace was shattered by the incessant noise and bustle emanating from next door. Her view was obstructed, her garden deprived of sunlight. But beyond these physical inconveniences, her social standing felt the tremors. The Waldorf became a magnet for society's rising stars, offering a parallel universe of glamour and prestige that threatened to undermine her exclusive dominion. She could not acknowledge it, nor could she fully engage with it without compromising her principles. The hotel represented everything she abhorred: the vulgarity of new money, the breakdown of social barriers, the triumph of commerce over gentility. Yet even in her despair, Caroline Astor possessed an indomitable spirit. She would not simply retreat. She was, after all, Mrs. Astor. And though William had landed a devastating blow, the battle was far from over. The opening of the Waldorf, far from ending the conflict, merely escalated it, transforming a simmering family feud into a full-blown societal spectacle. The question now was not whether Caroline would respond, but how. The Astor dynasty, once a bastion of unity and tradition, was now irrevocably divided, its future intertwined with the very architectural marvel that had been built as an act of revenge. And observing all of this, sometimes with amusement, sometimes with genuine concern, were the other members of the Astor clan, caught in the crossfire of this monumental struggle for dominance. The stage was now set for the ultimate countermove, a response that would once again reshape the legendary corner of 34th Street and 5th Avenue.
The Waldorf Hotel, a glittering colossus of 13 stories, cast a literal and metaphorical shadow over Caroline Astor's life. Every morning, the sun's rays, once bathing her beloved Fifth Avenue garden in gentle light, now struggled to pierce the edifice of her nephew's revenge. The once private sanctuary of her home became a stage, its windows no longer offering secluded views, but rather a constant, unsettling awareness of the hundreds of eyes from the hotel's upper floors. The ceaseless hum of activity, the arrival and departure of carriages, the laughter and chatter of guests, the distant strains of music from the hotel's ballrooms infiltrated her once tranquil domain, a relentless auditory assault on her carefully constructed world. Caroline Astor, the undisputed doyenne of New York society, found herself in an unprecedented predicament. The Gilded Age was indeed a time of unprecedented wealth, but it was also a period of profound social anxieties. The rigid class structures, inherited from European traditions, were under constant assault by the sheer force of American self-made fortunes. Her 400 list, a bulwark against the perceived vulgarity of new money, felt increasingly besieged. William Waldorf Astor's hotel was not just a personal slight, it was a symbol of this seismic shift, a public declaration that money, in its rawest, most ostentatious form, could now buy its way into the very heart of society, bypassing the old gatekeepers. She could not attend functions there without tacitly endorsing her nephew's audacity, yet to ignore it was to appear out of touch, even powerless. Her dignity, however, remained intact. She refused to acknowledge the hotel, carrying on with her social calendar as if the monstrous structure next door simply did not exist. But the strain was undeniable, the humiliation deeply felt.
Observing his mother's silent suffering was John Jacob Astor IV, known to many as J.J. Astor. Unlike his more traditional, socially conservative mother, J.J. was a man of the new age. He was an inventor, a military officer, a writer, and perhaps most importantly, a shrewd businessman. He had inherited the Astor entrepreneurial spirit, a drive for innovation and progress that often clashed with his mother's reverence for tradition. While he deeply respected his mother and her social standing, he also understood the changing tides of New York. The Waldorf Hotel, for all its audacity, was undeniably a success, catering to a burgeoning class of wealthy Americans who craved luxury without the stifling formality of old society.
J.J. witnessed the relentless torment inflicted upon his mother. He saw the proud matriarch, once so unyielding, now shadowed by a constant cloud of irritation and indignation. The noise, the loss of light, the sheer insolence of William's act, it was a personal affront to his family's honor. But where others might have retreated or simply complained, J.J. saw an opportunity, albeit a painful one. The existing mansion, once a symbol of unassailable prestige, was now a beleaguered relic, outmoded and overshadowed. To preserve his mother's legacy, to reclaim their family's dominance on Fifth Avenue, a radical move was required. After much deliberation, and with his mother's reluctant yet firm approval, J.J. Astor announced his countermove. He would demolish his mother's beloved brownstone, the very home where she had reigned as Mrs. Astor for decades. The news was even more shocking than William's initial act. To tear down such a monument, the very seat of New York society, was almost sacrilegious. But in its place, J.J. declared he would construct a hotel even grander, even taller, and even more luxurious than the Waldorf. This was not merely an act of upmanship, it was a total commitment to reclaiming architectural and social dominance. As construction on the Astoria progressed, a curious situation began to unfold. Here were two colossal hotels, built by competing branches of the same family, literally side by side, each striving to outdo the other. The immense scale of both projects was a testament to the Gilded Age's boundless ambition, but it also presented a practical dilemma. New York City, even with its burgeoning wealth, had finite resources for such high-end luxury. The economic landscape, while generally robust, had seen the Panic of 1893 still casting a long shadow, reminding even the wealthiest of the perils of overextension. Two competing mirror-image hotels, sharing a wall and an address, threatened to cannibalize each other's profits. Enter the pragmatists. George C. Bolt, the shrewd and visionary manager of the Waldorf, recognized the absurdity and potential financial ruin of this escalating familial feud. He saw not two rivals, but one colossal opportunity. He began quiet negotiations with J.J. Astor, proposing a merger. The idea was audacious. Instead of fighting to the death, why not unite and create an unparalleled hospitality empire? The negotiations were undoubtedly fraught with tension, embodying the very conflict that had brought them to this point. For William Waldorf Astor, it meant a grudging acknowledgement of his aunt's and now his cousin's power. For J.J. Astor, it meant forging an alliance with a man who had intentionally caused his mother distress. But beneath the layers of personal animosity, the cold logic of business prevailed. The combined entity would be truly magnificent, an unrivaled behemoth of luxury. And so, a reluctant truce was declared. In 1897, the two hotels, born of bitter rivalry, were joined together. The Waldorf and the Astoria, The architectural symbols of a family's division were connected by a grand, opulent corridor on the ground floor. It was christened Peacock Alley, a name that perfectly captured its vibrant, bustling atmosphere, where the city's elite would promenade, peacocking their finery and engaging in the intricate dance of Gilded Age society. The Waldorf Astoria Hotel was born. It was an instant legend, the largest and most luxurious hotel in the world, a veritable city within a city. It boasted 1,300 rooms, 14,000 electric lights, and innovations like the Red Lacquer Room and the Empire Room, setting new standards for hospitality. It became the epicenter of New York society, attracting presidents, royalty, industrial magnates, and celebrities from around the globe. The very space that had once been a battleground of personal vendetta now stood as a testament to grudging compromise, an architectural marvel forged from the ashes of familial pride. This was the climax of their architectural warfare. The weapons of choice, stone, steel, and height, had been deployed to their fullest extent. The initial goal of William Waldorf Astor to overshadow his aunt was met with an even grander countermove, leading to a stalemate that forced an unexpected union. The grand, unified structure was a forced reconciliation, a physical manifestation of a truce imposed by the inexorable demands of economics and the potential for greater glory through cooperation. The Astor family, though still carrying the scars of their internal conflict, had inadvertently created a monument that would define an era, a grand stage where the glittering drama of American high society would unfold for decades to come. But this magnificent, hard-won unity, born of such intense personal animosity, carried within it the seeds of its own impermanence. The grandest chapter had just begun, but the ultimate irony was yet to reveal itself.